guys, welcome back to Location 1980's Art Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Fortune, my co-host, Eric Ringman.
Good evening.
And our special guest tonight, Katya, Catherine. Tell us your full name, because I don't know how that happened.
Yes.
When you switched.
So in English, most people know me as Catherine Zhukovsky. In Russian, my real name is Katerina Sergeyevna Zhukovskaya.
Say it again louder.
Katerina Sergeyevna Zhukovskaya. And if you can pronounce that, then you earn the right to call me Katya. But you get special permission.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Perfect.
You've already been okayed.
Fantastic. Well, thanks. Have you been on the podcast before?
I have been on one podcast before, so this is my second time.
Regarding art?
Regarding art.
What did you talk about?
I don't remember. It was really scary the first time.
All right. Well, so on this podcast, we like to talk about art. Our love is art, how you make it, artists who make it, why they do it, the process it takes, some of the technicalities, some of the hang-ups, and like when you get to your shine and when it's rough. So we're just telling the story of your work and how you fell in love with art and why you make it, and the whole reason behind it. So we just did another episode right before this, and you're part of Feminine Undertones, which is currently hanging at Location 1980. We just talked to Stephanie Snee, who was the curator of the show. And I'm not sure if she picked you or we got to kind of influence the vote. So Stephanie picked a lot of good artists, but also we were like, and they're in the show. Also, Jill, I think, was a part of that. She picked it.
Thank you to all of you.
For sure. So tell us about your experience being in this show in particular, and then after that we'll get into everything else. Yeah, the beginning, the middle, and the end.
All right. This show has been awesome. It looks incredible. Stephanie did a really good job curating. Yeah, it's been really cool. I've been in a lot of group shows, and a lot of them have just been sort of open themed or like a really broad idea. And I feel like Feminine Undertones is a really cool idea.
How did you interpret the term feminine undertones?
So a lot of my work is about the female body, or my body, which is the female body, I guess. So I sort of vibe with the feminine undertones, overtones maybe. Undertones might be too simple. But I feel like I don't know how many people caught the like FU in the feminine undertones, but
she stated it specifically earlier.
Did she?
Well, she did.
Yes,
well, it's on so Steph did the graphic design for all the ads, and I had only known that the show was happening, and was not involved in the administration or the design of it at all, the curation, whatever. And then she releases the first advertisements for it for all of us to put on social media and all that, and a little poster. And it was very clearly feminine undertones, FU.
Yeah.
Like it was extremely obvious. And I love that. And I was surprised that I have not had a single person mention that to me as I've promoted the show to like friends and like, I don't know, my dentist, like everybody, as you do. You get people who might be interested in coming to the show to come to the show. Nobody's mentioned it. And I'm like, guys, come on. Like, this is good. This is genius.
Well, it's cool that you noticed it right away.
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool. And like, I have been like a weird little rebellious person my whole life. So that, that really speaks to me. If you can sneak an FU into anything, like, I'm in.
Perfect. So when you responded, are your pieces, you have 2 pieces, I believe, in the show? And you make work fast and slow.
Yeah.
But did you have these pieces already ready? Because Stephanie already explained the fact that it was not so much a call for entry, like make these pieces for this show. It's like, what do you do best? And if we picked you, or if you're in the show, just show us your best work now. And that the feminine undertone would be the kind of intangible that ties everyone together. Which we kind of, do you recognize that in the show?
Yeah. I can
like
feel
a
it.
concurrent
Yeah,
red
sweet.
thread through the stuff.
Absolutely.
So were your pieces preconceived? They were already there in the inventory?
Yeah, so these were already done at the end of last year and beginning of this year, I believe.
I've just seen a lot of I've seen a lot of your work. I haven't
Yeah.
seen these two particular
Yeah,
pieces,
yeah.
so I didn't know if you were like, oh, I'm gonna create this out, or if you just were like, oh, I got the perfect pieces.
Yeah, no, these two are ready to go. I work fast and slow sort of simultaneously. My actual mark making is really, really quick. And then I spend a lot of time just like wandering around and looking at it and not looking at it and thinking about it and avoiding thinking about it and ignoring it and then feeling really guilty about ignoring it and then coming back and making like 3 more very fast marks and
So
deciding
do
it's
part
done.
of it, and then you may sit away from it, and then come back to part of it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
in the meantime, are you working on other things that are faster, like less important or less different than that? So if you have a main thing going and you're really into it, doing your process, is there other things you could be like, I'm just gonna fuck around and find out?
Sometimes I'm like the least efficient person on earth. Like my household in general is like an anti-efficiency zone. Like we like actively try to not solve for efficiency. So sometimes like something fast will just like need to exist in the world.
Nice.
And then I will just churn it out. But a lot of the times it's really just like waffling. And I wish that I could split my attention between lots of different things. And my brain won't do that. I just have to only be working on like one major thing in the least efficient way possible.
Okay.
So you don't have multiple pieces going at once.
No, I keep trying to, and it never
You don't have
actually
to.
works out.
Yeah,
I
you
just
don't
can't do
have
it.
Yeah, whatever works.
What does Stephanie call it? Like not multitasking, like
Task switching, because human brains are single thread processors. Multitasking is an illusion.
Yeah.
tasks.
You're just jumping back and forth.
We started a hashtag, but I can't remember it. But it was the ability to switch tasks, not to quote unquote multitask.
Yeah.
The hashtag.
So you're going the other way. You're like
Yeah, no,
not
I'm
multitasking at all. In fact,
No, I'm
one
monomaniacal.
task
Yeah.
and one task and most inefficient.
Exactly. It's like
I like
hyper focusing, but like nothing gets done very quickly.
So the task is here, and it's like I'm gonna hyper focus, but kind of over there.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Take the long
Yeah.
way.
Yeah,
Wander in.
it's just like an open tab in my brain, and I can't get rid of it. But it
There's no-
takes how long it takes. Yeah.
Okay.
Does
I like
the
that.
sense, or maybe I should say, where does the sense of completion for a piece come from when you suddenly, or maybe not so suddenly, but somehow you know, like, aha, this is done.
If the
Ready to hang.
if the stated process is openly inefficient,
Yeah.
that being said, there has to be one point, which unfortunately for you or inefficient people, still has to be like where you're like, and at the end of all this inefficiency, there's one singular moment.
The indicator, this is complete.
Yeah.
So how does that happen
So-
in that brain?
I usually get something to the point where it's like 95% done. And then there's like a few more weeks of just waffling about it and making myself miserable. And then it's done in like 5 minutes when I finally
when you
get back
to that
to it.
95 spot, are you at that time? Can you feel it's at 95, or do you feel it's like 50, and then you think about it for a couple weeks and you realize it's at 95?
It never feels like 95, but it does feel like it's pretty close. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, like 2-3 more sessions maybe. And then when I finally drag myself back to it and like make myself do it, it's like 5 minutes and I'm done. And then it like, I've never really had trouble knowing when a piece was done. I think I'm just bored of it and I never want to interact with it again. And that's when it's done.
Get out of my house.
But there's also a certain satisfaction, right? Because if it wasn't quite there, you'd be like, I'm bored of it, but shit, I gotta do more.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then there comes another point where you're like, no, I can definitely let this go.
There's
Like, it's good to go.
until it's done, there's stuff that bothers me every time I look at it. And at the point where it's done, like it doesn't bother me anymore. I just like, I'm just like, I've washed my hands of it. Like I'm just fully done. I don't hate it. Like I still love it. I'm very happy with it. But like, I just don't want to play with it anymore.
It's in another mode.
Yeah.
Now, yeah.
The hyperfocus has moved on, and then I know it's time to start a new piece.
I've said that on this podcast too. My personal finish it artwork is what doesn't piss me off. Nothing. Signature. It's out. And you're not giving yourself a free pass, especially in your case. You're admittedly saying it's taking me a long time. I'm going to do whatever it takes inefficiently. I'm the opposite. I'm extremely efficient. I want it done matter-of-factly, and I expect all these steps to happen very fast. But I appreciate you saying like, nope, whatever it takes, however I get there, however long it takes. But then still at the end, we share and comment like, I'm not pissed anymore. I love it. And I've seen a lot of your work. It's like, I haven't been to your studio, but you've showed work here multiple times. Mm-hmm. And there is a finished quality. Like I know you're not still working on it. You popped it. It's your style. It's definitely you. And it's cool to see how these different ways like skyrocket, wandering path, you still get to that last point. You're like, all right, we're good. Let's get over it. We did jump to the future and the present, which is cool. But what I'd like to ask you about is your past. So I've only known you from 1980. Mm-hmm. We met here, I believe. I think you started musing here. You're
2016, I think.
You're a professional muse. Eric, do the math.
2017, maybe.
How long ago was that? So like
8
multiple years. It's a lot of years.
It is multiple, definitely.
Sorry, I had that right. So multiple years ago.
Almost on our decade anniversary.
Hey, and you've been a great part of this. So you were musing here. Would you like to talk about art musing?
Sure.
Were you a muse before? I think not, maybe.
You were both artists. You're already an artist at the time you started modeling.
And we're talking about specifically figure drawing
and
modeling.
No, yeah. So I ended up here originally through yoga. So when I moved back to Orange County,
shout out to yoga.
Shout out to yoga. When I moved back to Orange County in 2016, after having lived multiple places for multiple years at that point, I didn't know anyone in town anymore. And so I decided to do a yoga teacher training to literally like make friends. It was great. It worked. An expensive way to make friends, but you know.
But I mean, some friends can be expensive.
It's true.
And some friends are cheap as fuck.
That felt pointed.
I'm sure there's. Whoa! Wow! Thanks.
You have to look him in the eye.
I hope you're not watching that.
I was going multiple states.
Yeah,
I was thinking, I was like, oh yeah, there's so many. Anyway.
See, I took none of that energy from you, but she detected something. So now says more about what you think of me than what you do.
I see it.
Yeah, you do.
What I'm saying is, those expensive friends got you into making.
It's true. No, it absolutely paid off. But one of the instructors was teaching like a community class here. And I think he was subbing for someone else's class. It was like a weird, like last minute.
Was it Mbatu? What's his name?
I don't remember. I do not remember who it was anymore.
Okay.
So I came just to like be a body here because we were worried no one would show up because it wasn't his regular teaching gig. It ended up being super fun. And obviously 1980 is great. And so then I was determined to just stick around. And so I cold emailed you and like lightly lied my way into being a muse.
Yes. Doesn't take much.
I definitely claimed to have experience, which was
that's fine.
An exaggeration.
You know what? By doing that was experience enough.
Yeah.
That's there's some shamanic wisdom right there.
I reward
Kids,
that.
take notes.
When I lived in Australia, my friend's father, who was from New Zealand, was like very adamant about just getting through life by just like lying about your experience until they give you the job, and then like you figure out how to do the job and it's
Hashtag
fine.
Fake it till you make it.
Exactly. It worked great for him.
And that's how we met on a fake email.
We met on I lied to you.
It wasn't a fake email. You're a real person.
It was a real email, but
and
I did
email
lie to you.
real. But you also had genuine interest.
I did.
And you also came and were a hell of a model.
Thank you.
So you made an impression to the point where Jim Trollinger put you on one of his book covers. I believe you might have made a
I
cover.
think I'm on 2 book covers.
Oh, sorry.
Wow.
Check the stats. AI, put a metric on that. You might have the most book covers in Location 19 history. I stand corrected.
Record-setting news. Thank you very much.
And so how was it when you came here as a Muse? I didn't know you as an artist at all.
Yeah.
But it didn't take long before you were like, also I do art. And we had, and we still do, where a lot of our art muses, for figure drawing in particular, for those of you who aren't watching and just listening, we do figure drawing, and it might be your first episode ever listening. We do figure drawing once a week at least for the last almost 15 years straight. And,
Best one in the area.
and thank you. And so when you came as a figure drawing model, my thing is like, curating the models, or at the point where we didn't have Jill and she wasn't booking all the talent. I was, and you fooled me pretty easily. Like, yes.
Lie in your emails, people.
But when you came, you crushed it. And I didn't know, like, oh, she's a really good model. And then Jim Trollinger, a former guest on the show, he put together a lot of books and publications to let us kind of document the figure drawing work, both the artists and the muses that have been here. But at the time when you've done it, I didn't know you're an artist until you kind of snuck it in also.
I wasn't at the time,
okay.
is the thing.
Oh,
I was
okay.
on like a long hiatus from
Okay.
art at the time.
So that's
That could be a good time to dive into a hiatus from, like, where did that start? Because we've had some folks here who they're like, yeah, I was doing art the second I could pick up a pencil at 4 years old, and like everybody told me I was great at art, and they just went straight into a BFA from childhood. And then others that are like, no, literally after college, like I never thought about art, and then totally picked it up as an adult. So
Right,
what's
model.
your what's your story of getting into arts and seeing yourself as artistic, as creative, as an artist?
and I'm gonna do it, not talk. Like just bam.
Yeah. All right. So if my name didn't tip you off at the beginning, I was born in Russia, but I grew up here. And so I had this sort of weird, like semi-European, semi-American education growing up. So I was super artsy. My mom like put me into after school art classes as a kid. We went to museums and operas and ballets and symphonies. Like arts were in the house.
Quick note: when did you move? Were you 3 months, 6 years?
I was 2.5.
Okay, so you're a baby.
Yeah.
So you didn't know.
But I was a really early language adopter. So I already spoke Russian. And then they put me in like bilingual daycare in LA to learn English, which worked, I think.
Do you still speak Russian?
I do. I still speak, read, write with like much more slowly and with a less extensive vocabulary because I don't get to practice it as much. But I do still.
So you came here, and then how did your art career take off?
Yeah, so I was just doing like after school art programs. I always sort of loved school in general, and school art programs around here are really good. So I was very lucky. And then in high school, I took AP art, but my school didn't make you take the AP exam if you took the AP class. And I knew that there was like absolutely no way that I was going to get to go to art school even if I was like seriously considering it, because for like good immigrant kid reasons, like that was not in the cards.
Like, did you think it was a talent thing or something else?
No. Like I like jokingly floated the idea to my mom once, and she was like, absolutely not.
Oh, it was like you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, like an artist.
Yeah.
Was there something else you did better to
I was good at everything in school in general, so like it wasn't
shout out to
nerds. So like it was not an issue, and I always knew I was going to go to college to like do something. And I figured out,
Yeah.
And I come from like a very scientific family. Everyone had an MD, a PhD, or both. So like I was on track to do the thing. I figured out really early on that if I told adults I wanted to be a veterinarian, they thought that was awesome. So I just said that my whole life without really thinking about it that hard. But that's ostensibly what I went into college for. So I majored in biology. And then I decided I don't really want to be a vet. Maybe I'll be like a scientist. I'll go get a PhD and do the thing. And I worked in research labs for a long time, and it was very fun. I loved science.
This is after school then?
This is, during and right after college for a few years. So I did genetics, genomics, which was like very new and exciting at the time. It's still kind of new and exciting, but it was like
CSI,
brand new.
CSI like Dexter or like dinosaurs? Like
no, and the CSI stuff is like not real. Sorry to break it to you, but like court DNA evidence is really bad. You can't get a clean sample. It's a whole thing. But no, so we didn't have really good computers and storage systems at the time. And so we were pulling literally multiple terabytes of data because we were doing entire genomes. So just like a huge amount of DNA. It's a ridiculous amount of data. And then we were like trying to figure out how to process it and like cobble it together into something meaningful. So we were literally like renting time on supercomputers, which makes me sound way older than I am. This was happening very recently. And we were like buying...
Post 2000 is still happening.
Yeah, we still had to rent time on a supercomputer, and we were like buying multiple 1 terabyte external hard drives because that was the biggest you could get, and crashing the supercomputers every time.
We just got integrated with fireworks.
Yeah, for those of you listening, because I know this is audible from Amy's episode where we had a firework go off at the perfect
sorry
time.
about that.
Yeah. We're about a week
just
after 4th of July
gunshots.
here.
I thought it was a giant ice machines.
Okay, gunshots, fireworks, ice machine.
Text your
Walk into
favorite
a bar.
to 1980 at...
Vote now.
Yeah, gunshots get me a little worried.
Fair.
Ice machine or fireworks, I could do.
Well, you're giving me an idea for an art project that's like a machine that takes a huge block of ice and then it fires a gun at it to chunk it off into smaller ice for your cup.
And it's about climate change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
See the vision.
Yeah, okay.
Fair enough.
Bring it to the next burn.
Yeah, so you went genome, you did it.
More or less. We were trying.
And then you're like, nope, gotta do art.
It was super fun and I loved it. And then at some point I realized I was not going to go back and get my PhD because everyone I knew that was in a PhD program was like disintegrating. They were not having a good time. And I was like, maybe it doesn't sound fun anymore and I don't want to do that. So I worked like science adjacent. I worked at SF State in the research administration offices, which was also super fun. And then I decided to move back down here because I was 27 and my life imploded, as it does when you're 27. I think that's like a mandatory rite of passage.
Why not? 27, 28, 29.
Yeah, 27 is a good luck number.
You're coming up to 30 and you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, well, it's like 27 club, right? Like you either die or like figure out a new way to live your life.
When I got my apartment, it's
literally or
number
metaphorically.
27, and I'm like, this is the best omen ever.
And we're also guys, what's it like, also like, should you be married now, have a baby thing?
No, not
none of that was entering.
No.
Good.
I didn't want kids. That was not, and I don't want marriage. So like that was not.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right,
Easy.
cool.
But I
Sometimes
did
it's
break up with the
pressure.
person I was dating. So.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't make it. Fair enough.
Yeah, so I came back down here and then like worked random odd jobs. I'm not sure I could even like remember all of them. Like yoga instructor, bartender. I like drove for Lyft for like a week. Got bored.
If I can interrupt you for 1 second, we call it our side hustle, artist side hustle.
Yeah.
We all had them.
But I wasn't arting yet.
I know. So this is great. This is just like unprecedented. It's pre-arting
No main
side hustle.
It's a pre-hustle.
So, yeah, it is. But so again, start over Lyft.
Yeah, for like a week. I think I drove like 2 people. It was lovely. It was really nice. I was really lonely because, again, I like, didn't know anyone. So I was just looking for like jobs that would let me like talk to people.
Your Lyft career was 2 rides?
Yeah, it was real short.
And then what else happened?
3 stars.
I think it didn't seem worth the like time and wear and tear on my car and stuff. Like it was not.
No, I'm saying as far as your other
bartending.
So, this is not a like Lyft smearing podcast.
It could be, but it's not.
Yeah. Then 2020 happened, and I got.
What were your side hustles in 2020?
Or
main hustles?
My main hustle was I was working at a yoga studio, and I was like on the management team and teaching classes. And then we all got laid off because it was March 2020. So then I got to collect unemployment. So then I just had time and money.
You got to collect unemployment.
It was good. I would like to do it again, please.
It's so weird for everybody else. Like, there's so many spectrums of employment, unemployment, your employment rate, your tax rate. In California, it's crazy because it's either hard or easy to get the wrong amount of things you're entitled to because you're paid into. Like, what the fuck? I've been self-employed for a lot of years. I've also had side hustles where you get a 1099 or you're employed, which seems really weird. But it's just an like you said, career adjacent. It's just like, I'll take the money right now because I need to do this, and however it breaks down, whatever 1099 or whatever it is, give me the money, and I'm definitely not doing this forever.
Yeah.
As an artist, once you discovered art, how did that affect your opinion about side hustles? Like now you're like, when's the first time you got paid? Like, well, let's not get there yet. You weren't arting yet, which is like a definite quote that we need to know. I thought we were waiting for a delivery guy. And it was Stephanie. Delivery girl. Shout out to the delivery girls. So at one point,
feminine undertones.
Just freaking your side hustle.
F you. At one point, you weren't arting, and you were doing all these side hustles, and you weren't going to be a scientist or a genomist.
Yeah.
Or a Lyft driver.
Or a Lyft driver.
Or Uber driver. No. Or Uber Eats. Or any of that. When did the arting happen?
Yeah, so towards the end of 2020, my partner got me, I think, as like a holiday gift. God, what was it called? It was like the Brooklyn Sketchbook Library Project, something like that. I think it's defunct now. I think it literally burned down, if I remember correctly. But for many years, it was this little like gallery library thing, and they would send out this little sketchbook, and people would fill it out and send it back, and then they would digitize it and archive it, and so people could go into the sketchbook library and look at people's art, and then you could always pull it up online. It was a really, really cool project. And so my partner was like, that would be such a cute gift. And bear in mind, at this point, like I haven't really done art since high school. And like, I wasn't seriously doing it in high school because I was like, this isn't like a thing I'm going to do for my job. That would be ridiculous.
And your mom was pissed about that.
Yeah.
No.
So I
did it.
I procrastinated for 8 months. And then I did it like the week before it was due and mailed it in on time somehow.
All artists, yeah. All artists ever.
Doesn't matter how it got across the finish line.
And that like put the fire back in me. I was like, this is a great pandemic project. Like I have so much time to kill and I need something to do.
So in that time, so this is like 2020 at some point.
Yeah, 2020 and like first half of 2021.
If you're watching, between then and now, she did this piece. And so many other killer pieces. I'm so impressed.
These aren't even the big ones.
I didn't know that because I know you being a Muse here, and then also we do a thing called Muses Draw for free. A lot of our muses have been art students, and when you come back, you can also draw. You can be inspiring people by your physique and your posing prowess, and then also on the other side making art. But I had no idea that you entered.
I've just been lying to you the whole time.
I love it, and I only hope that you're like I want you to be lying to me right now, but
I know, I'm amazed it's going to come out after this, dude.
But I'm just saying, like, if you were like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, lie really hard, like lie hard.
This is high def, so you gotta lie really hard.
So hard. It's so funny. I'm actually a really bad liar. That's why I only lie by email.
That's exactly what a fucking top
That is what a liar would say.
I'm impressed with your aesthetic and the fact that you entered that contest. Did you get into the Brooklyn sketchbook?
So it's not a contest. It's literally like if you send it in, like
It's in there.
It's in there. Yeah. It's like it was like this lovely community project. And then I was like, well, let me make some more paintings. And I made a couple like itty bitty ones, like 6 inches by 6 inches, I think. And then I had been scared off by my high school art teacher from oil paints. Like my whole life, I was since high school, I guess, I was terrified of oil paints.
Specifically, why?
So she like really drilled in how like toxic and dangerous and don't breathe it in. And so I was just like, oh no, I can't do this.
Like actual like physical.
Nothing about the technical. Like,
No. She was just like, it'll kill you. And I was like, oh God. And keep in mind, like I worked in labs for my entire adult life. But again, like that's in a lab. We have like a ventilation hood. And I was like in my bedroom. I was like, I don't have airflow in here. But I started researching it, and I found out that oil paint predates all of the solvents that we use by like a while. So people have been using oil paints without solvents, and it's the solvents that have like inhalation danger, right? If you have heavy metals in your paint, like don't eat them. That's bad for you. But don't eat paint probably anyway.
Just sniff it, whatever you gotta do.
But you're not in danger of like inhaling
it
and suffering negative health consequences for that. So I was like, okay, great. I'll just buy oil paints. I went to like Michael's, I think, and got the like starter pack of student grade oil paint.
Shout out to the coupon code at Michael's.
Yeah.
25%. Like, so you went from that to this? Like,
yeah, so I bought these like teeny tiny tubes and I was like, let me just like try an oil painting. And it turns out I really like oil painting. My first oil painting I did got juried into Made in California at the Brea. Yeah. So I was like, okay, like maybe we're onto something.
So what is it specifically that you love about oil painting?
But also say that what did it get juried into? 'Cause people don't know Brea.
Yes. So Brea has this really cool... The city of Brea has a really cool gallery, and they do this big exhibit every year called Made in California, which is open to all artists in California, but a ton of people apply. They're very selective. And I didn't know any of these things because I was hearing about all of it for the first time ever and was like, let me just apply to this show. This seems fun.
Let me just email this guy.
Yeah.
And just so you guys know how good this is, I also applied to Made in California my first year professionally making art and was not in it. So there is an actual cut.
If it makes you feel any better, I've been rejected twice since.
Oh, no, I feel great. I want the viewers to know that this is like an actual competition that some people are said no to. So no, you earned it. That's what I'm trying to say.
And what did you submit?
I submitted a self-portrait. The green one, as everyone
how big are we talking?
responds to it.
Your eyes are green.
It was like, they are.
Did it come from within?
Probably. I didn't think about it literally at all.
Okay.
Like this
She's
is
like, everything I see is green.
Everything I see is green. Again, this was my first oil painting. I literally did like one little sketch of a hand just to like feel the paints and was like, seems fine. And then the painting was like 2 feet tall, I think. It's not comparatively very small now. It feels very small to me now. But yeah, it turns out it felt very intuitive, much more intuitive than acrylic paint. I feel like acrylic paint is very good at doing what you want it to. If you have like a very clear vision, I think acrylic paint is like a very quick way to get there. I never know what I want to be doing. I like to like discover it as I go.
Inefficient.
I'm inefficient.
Yeah.
And the oil paint feels very organic. It's literally fat, right? It's like painting with butter and oil. So it has opinions about what it wants to do.
Okay.
And it's really fun to collaborate with the oil paint, and like it will fight you if you're trying to get it to do something it doesn't want to do. And I just find that really compelling. And it's great for people like me who like to like paint furiously for an hour and then walk away for 3 weeks and think about it, and then you can still work with it.
So like culturally, once you get into that, and that like set you off, like the spark. Like, I'm gonna do a little bit of art. You had a number of side hustles going. I'm thinking.
Well, it was post 2020, so I didn't have anything going on.
So that's a fresh start.
Yeah.
And then, do you restart that? Going, all right, now I need to be in more shows, make more paintings, have a studio, and you've done several Christmas shows here, even including I think 2020.
It's where I sold my first painting.
Nice.
Shout out to 1980.
Yeah.
Hit the button.
I'm with it. Yeah.
I make all my money here.
Fair enough. We love that. I'm having a lot of fun describing to the audience while I'm learning that all this is very new to you.
Yeah.
Because it's not new to me or probably all the artists we've had on here. So you're like the most fresh, most coming on strong though too. Like your work's impressive and you cut up quick. Did you find that like now you have a handle on your aesthetic, or did you like you're comfortable with being inefficient, which is great. It's just so refreshing. It's like, no, it'll get done when it gets done. Because everything else in the world is like AI needs to be done now.
Well, I like not only like it'll get done when it gets done, it'll be like it'll get done after it could have been done.
Yeah.
It's gonna take even longer, and just proudly
love it.
Well, see, I'm not from here. I fully missed the Protestant work ethic. Like no one told me I was supposed to have that.
Tell me more.
Did
what is
not.
That? I don't know.
The Protestant work ethic. That's like the thing that Americans have, where they're like really, really obsessed with working hard, like as a moral requirement.
Efficiency is like a cultural obsession for us here.
Yeah, yeah, and part of that is like a Christian influence, which also like was not in my house, so like I missed most of the like Americanisms, like that's.
So you can work hard, but also it's a good
feels
point.
good, but I'm also bad at surviving here. So
you're good at surviving here. Yeah, I mean you're
Still
case
standing.
in point, 100% survival rate right now.
Fair.
Cheers. Surviving. That's great. So you got pulled into the show, but before we get to the show, by you musing here, and you're on several, you're the record holder for Muse covers of Jim Trollinger's publications at Location 1980.
It's a stiff category.
Long-winded, but if you like, you can check it out on our website, buy one, invest. She'll be on the cover twice, which is once more than anybody else. Fair enough.
The least creepy way to pay to see me naked.
I didn't even mention the fact, but now that you did, these are about figure paintings and figure drawings. And have you come back? So a lot of your work doesn't always be, it's not always figurative, is it? But some of the more potent ones are.
Yeah, at this point, it's pretty much all figurative. I'm really interested in capturing what it feels like to have a body. And so far, I haven't found a better way to capture that feeling than to portray and distort the body. Never say never. It could veer off somewhere, but...
Do you feel kind of like you're with, maybe not with successive works, but just as you continue to do this, do you feel like you're spiraling closer and closer to achieving that thing that you're trying to express?
Especially having been so new to the aesthetic.
I don't know if I picture it as like a path to somewhere necessarily. Like in the same way that I sort of feel like I'm collaborating with the paints. Like it feels like an adventure.
That's the journey,
like
of
a
the
continuous
moment.
adventure. Yeah, exactly.
And then as you're on another painting, like that's the journey of the moment.
So
that stroke is the journey of the moment.
Yeah, I always say that like my job as a scientist and my job as an artist are like functionally the same, especially on like a day-to-day ground level. Like these are both iterative processes where you're like doing the same thing over and over again with like subtle changes to try and like get somewhere new. And you're following your curiosity toward until you like find a question that hasn't been answered that you want to answer. And then you figure out how to answer that question. And then that necessarily leads you to the next question.
Do you feel like not so much the painting, the like result itself is the answer, but for you, the doer, or the artist, that the doing is the answer? And then as a consequence of that, a painting happens to exist. And it's like, here, now you go by this, like I got what I needed out of it by the process.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm like chasing whatever the thing is that has like captured my attention and imagination and curiosity. And then when that's over, the painting is done and it's time for a new painting. And then it's super fascinating to me to like receive feedback from people on the finished work, because people have so many different interpretations, which is great. And that's like another like secondary process of discovering for me, where like now the work exists and I'm like, okay, like what is it doing in the world independently of me now?
Well, I love that. I feel like that's the payback we get as artists.
It's a sweet spot.
Because like I'm kind of the opposite of you, whereas my production is like I have a very clear idea of what the final thing should be before the first step has happened. And then I just basically am getting about the process of fabrication. And little to none is discovered through it. Sometimes it is, but it's not the predominant element. And but the feedback at the end, I love that, because people will give back all this different stuff, and that's not consciously why I do it, but it is totally a reward of like something in me compelled me to make this thing, and now what all these other folks, what they're getting out of articulating it and reflecting it to me, now it becomes a conversation, a two-way street, like a whole program, and there's a lot of payoff on my end from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the sort of external feedback and validation, like it can't be the whole thing. It can't be like the one thing you do it for, but like it helps.
Well,
it's part of the deal.
It's part of the deal.
Also, the difference for both of you being more like fresher to the scene of making art for either a living or a professional, and being exposed to other people's opinions. I've done it for a couple of decades before both of you, right? Like to the point where you're like, not only does it not necessarily validate, but then it becomes its own thing. So, but then you get experience at it. Like, oh, like I didn't even do it for this reason, but now that I'm familiar with the reason, like you could like it or take it. Like, I don't care what they think, or I love what they think. But either way, as you do one more and you get one more comment, one more experience, then it becomes its own thing also. So like now you're really fresh into like, also I just made it work and I showed it, and now I'm getting comfortable with the feedback as its own little baby on the side that's gonna influence your next work, maybe or maybe not. So how do you find that, like, now that you have gotten positive and negative feedback? And we were talking about right before you walked in, we knew you were coming, you're our next guest, and we're switching the artwork. And I commented specifically, several men were uncomfortable with this face. And so for those of you listening, it's, I'm assuming a female body, 3/4 diagonal, looking down at her.
Like first person perspective.
Looking down at herself with both of her hands above her crossed legs with a mask. It looks like maybe that's the mask. This was the debate. It was, is it a mask that you take off? Because like, some guy was like, he was so pissed. He's like, no. And I think he actually kind of won, because there's multiple debates your artwork spawned, which is great.
Yeah, we overheard several taking place during the opening reception.
That's my favorite.
And in the whole course of the work, there was like everything else is more of a genuine critique. Oh, this piece is lovely. This piece sparked an argument twice at least in front of my eyes, where I'm like also like knowing you, not having got your explanation, but knowing your work and knowing you personally, like I'm just gonna, and also being a gallerist and all these things, I'm just like, the best thing to do is just shut up and not say anything. Just listen. And I got to do it twice. And the first time was, I think it was multiple females talking about it, and the other time was a female and a male. To shout out to feminine undertones. We called it earlier masculine overtones. It's the opposite. And they were like, no, it's like this. Like, no, it's like this. And I was like, oh, this is saucy. But the one time he was like, no, it's like, he was like, I think that's when they get home and like after all the things, you take off your face that you wear for everyone else and you just get to be with yourself and like, reflect on yourself. And I was like, that's the most, and that was a guy who didn't get to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his opinion. And I was like, that's well thought out and well done.
Yeah.
Everything else was much more, no, rah, 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 it's for this reason, like, rah. And I was like, I don't know. Like, it seemed so dramatic and dynamic. So now that you're here, and for everybody watching, your piece is in the background, how would you explain it? What's it called when you make it? It's 3x3?
It's 3x3 feet. It's called Girl, Watch Your Face, based off the title of a self-help book, I think, called Girl, Wash Your Face, which I have not read. I'm
watch and watch.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm like a major self-help book hater. Like,
I don't read them.
yeah. I don't. I think they are an evil upon this world. So, but I was watching some, like, I've been very into long form video essays, and I'm talking like if I can find a YouTube video that's like 6 hours long about a piece of media I've never heard of, like, I'm immediately in. That's like a video game I'm never gonna play. Done.
That's
in.
fair.
Yeah.
You might be YouTube's dream customer.
This is what I love long form reporting, and we don't get a lot of that anymore. And this is like the closest
Very
thing
true,
I can get in the modern media landscape to long form reporting. So I was watching something about the Girl, Wash Your Face woman and her like meteoric rise and downfall.
What does she do?
Whatever.
Because I'm definitely not watching this after you tell me about
The author, right?
She influences, I don't know. She like married a Disney executive and then like, had a hobby job.
Well, she washed her face and then wrote a book.
Exactly. Yeah. I haven't read the book because I'm opposed to the genre.
So how did that?
Anyway,
Yeah, how did this
you wouldn't like.
influence?
no,
the
I would
painting?
hate it. I would hate all of this, but the video essay was delightful. So like this was sort of floating around in my mind, and I always name paintings like well after they're finished. It's usually like weeks or months later, and it's always, I'm just trying to like make myself laugh with the titles.
Will you be like out in the car and then on the radio they're like, and here's a review for this book, like Girl, Wash Your Face or something, random shit like that.
Yeah.
And then you're like, aha, painting title. Like, is that how they come to you, from like really left field with regard to the actual painting?
Not exactly. It's usually like I'll be looking at it and I'll think of like a pun based on some random thing that I like half remember hearing earlier. Or like a reference to something completely unrelated. So it will literally only be funny to me. And that's how my paintings get named, because that's my like last piece of like playing with piece of art before it like really leaves the nest.
Did you name it after you made it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
While
always.
you're inefficiently making it.
Yeah.
Was this an inefficient painting?
This was an inefficient painting. It was the background texture and the little like wormy squigglies were like the absolute last touches.
And that's pastel on top of it.
That's
right?
pastel on top, yeah. That's pastel, and then the background texture is gel medium mixed into the oil paint.
And like palette knife.
And palette knifed on there,
Yeah, it's like super 3D.
Yeah.
Not taught regularly in art school in any class. Love it.
Shouldn't know.
Inefficient.
Inefficient.
At its finest.
That's great.
So, but why did you make it in particular? Like, where you're like, I'm gonna do this.
So I had,
Vein, like
yeah,
I gotta say it.
I had done two other paintings at that point that were from this first person perspective, the auto nude, as we named it like an hour ago.
Perfect.
And partly like those had sold well, so I was like, maybe I'm like onto something. Partly like the idea was still interesting to me, and so I was just sort of playing with that perspective of like looking down at your own body. And this is one of the rare instances where I thumbnailed before I started, which is wild. I never do that. But I really wanted, I was bored of the compositions that I'd been using, and I wanted something like slightly more interesting. So I was like, maybe people are right about doing thumbnails. And I literally just like sat on the couch and like looked at myself like, I think I was wearing like pajamas. It was, there's some made up details here. Just to like get the perspective right of like, where do legs go?
Sure.
What would my hand angle be?
I.e. figure drawing.
I.e. figure
And
drawing.
modeling.
Yeah, it really helps to be your own model. That makes things speedy. And I couldn't, I had also done one painting of a figure holding a mask, and her face was sort of like super abstracted. She did have a head, but like there wasn't any detail on it. And then she was holding a mask that had a little bit more detail. And so that the mask thing was still sort of top of mind, and all of that like congealed into this painting.
So I wanted to ask you, like, what's the explanation? You just told us that much. Do you ever find, like, because your work is striking, and sometimes there's elements you're not here, so like, as a gallerist, I'll be like, oh, well, now that I know this much, I could present a portion, but I wouldn't pretend to like be inside your head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it? What's happening? But do you think like the aesthetic, like, is something they can figure out, or you don't care? You mentioned sales, like it's something that's sold a few times. It gives you a notion of like it's striking a few things.
Mm-hmm.
You can make it very inefficiently.
Yeah.
Then it comes off cool.
Mm-hmm.
Also, your own model,
Mm-hmm.
and it may or may not sell, but a little more than other things. So it's kind of leading you in a path of making more of these things. It's rewarding in multiple areas. Is there something where like it would bug you if like art critics, like they wrote this about you, or somebody who bought it was like, oh, I've heard this before. Like, so, one of my clients had my painting hanging upside down, and I was like, fuck, but it looks cool. And I was just like, they're not wrong, and they bought it, and whatever, it's still the same colors, and if it's a really good composition, it probably should look good.
It should.
Every way. So is there something that like now you're getting a little more experience where you're like this aesthetic, even the experience of this show, like now having told you about the debate I've heard, and other people, it came up earlier, where like you really, there's something striking about the masks maybe, or how you present them that does it. Is that something you want to get into in the future?
I mean, I always want the work to be expressive and emotive. And, as a Russian person, like debates and arguments are like my love language. Like these are very important to me. So like if people are arguing about my work, like I did it. Like I have a right, like we're good. They can hang it upside down. That's totally fine. Like I'm not like attached to the actual art object once it's done. Like
it's important what you're saying right
now. The thing I needed out of it is done. Like, I got the thing that I needed out of it. And so even the ones that I like really love, like I just, at some point I'm just like, get it out of my house. Like I don't need it anymore. It's not doing anything for me anymore. And I love when it does something for other people. Like if people are standing around it and arguing about it, that's like the best possible outcome.
Super exciting. Love it. Did you have anything to say about her piece, Eric?
Well, without
it's off camera.
disappointing either the audio or the YouTube crowd too much because it is off camera. So this one is also highly visceral, which is probably the first word I would apply to like the majority of your work.
Yeah, striking.
Yeah, definitely striking across the board. I have a print of yours, as you know. Came with your circuitous means. And this one's definitely like of a different tone. And I noticed it's got the main figure has, what is it called, a Matryoshka doll?
Matryoshka.
Matryoshka. Okay, wow.
The nesting doll.
I need some help. Yeah. In its hand. And what's the title again?
Post-Soviet kitsch, parentheses, but home is nowhere.
But home is nowhere. So that, and it looks like there's a dog in there with like a necklace and stuff. Multiple dogs, actually. So that's indicative to me of a sense of, you could look at it from one side, calling it a homelessness, like a never feeling truly landed, or also a home everywhereness. My standard is motion, and so, home is where I lay my head, kind of a thing, which I think has a beautiful quality to it.
Yeah.
Do either of those things speak to, or is that what you're trying to speak to us with this? Or I should broader say, where is it coming from?
Good critique, bro.
Yeah, I like that.
Because the piece is alarming.
Well, it's intense, but it's not like uncomfortable either.
No.
It's gnarly for sure, but there's so much humanity to it. And like intimacy and comfort at the same time. So yeah, what's up?
I like visceral, alarming. Like these are good. I like these words. So that one is born of the ephemera of my like Soviet media childhood. So there's a couple figures out of Chagall paintings because we always had those hanging in my house. There's like cartoon characters from Soviet cartoons.
They got some interesting animation over there.
Oh my God, the animation is beautiful. Like absolutely top. Like there's nothing better than the Soviet animations. They're so good. And it is a little bit like homeless in a good and bad way. Like I think I've always sort of felt on the outside of things or like not quite belonging anywhere, but not in a bad way. Like it's like a weird little rebellious gremlin my whole life. Like I really value the feeling of like not quite belonging.
Well, and I relate to that, and I feel like LA is to a large degree constituted of that.
Yeah.
Right, and Frank Lloyd Wright, one of the all-time legends, who he had a lot of disdainful things to say about LA, despite repeatedly doing some of his best work here. And he said, some people could call this pejorative. I think it's amazingly complimentary as a native, right? You tip the world on its side, and everything that's not bolted down will land in Los Angeles. And like I find that complimentary.
Yeah.
And a microcosm for all of America, really, or at least the more potent metro areas in America, because you get the blend of.
Yeah, I mean, this country compared to the world.
You mentioned your Russian childhood, but you said earlier you came here when you were 2.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean you didn't have a Russian childhood in LA, which is dope.
Oh yeah.
Which a lot of people can relate to. Like,
we lived in West Hollywood, which is like as Russian Jewish as it is gay. Like this is the two categories of people that are like melding in West Hollywood. That's like still where I do all my like grocery shopping if I need Russian food. That's where the best Russian restaurant or Soviet bloc restaurant.
I used to live
rebranded as a Ukrainian restaurant, which like based.
I used to live right at Rosewood and Robertson, so we're gonna need to talk about restaurants after this.
Yeah.
a good critique on your piece.
Yeah.
Are you finished explaining, or is it?
Door's very open there still.
And well, speaking of food, we got some pizza. We're about to eat.
Well, in this viscerality, though, I want to touch back into this.
Yeah.
There's a common meme that's been going around the last year-ish, which is pretty good longevity for a meme these days.
Hawk 2?
Way more based than Hawk 2, which that shit's based, but...
Don't admit to knowing that one.
If you don't know that one, you might not have 3G even.
If you don't know that one, then you're not a middle-aged man on the internet. Don't get too excited about that one.
That's about as universal as they come, pun intended. But anyhow...
Middle-aged man.
Yeah, but guess who explained that one to me?
It's self-explanatory.
So you weren't talking about
But anyway, I wasn't talking about that one. I was talking about one where people will do these little video bits, or even like a split screen still photo, and they'll go, the artist, the art, and it's this huge contrast, and it's always very comical. One of the best ones, of course, right? Junji Ito. It was like the artist, and he's like somebody's friendly, fun, funky uncle, and then the art, and it's all this like super heavy, like anxiety, suicidal ideation, like fucking conceptions of self, like all this intense stuff. And
then the other one is like Studio Ghibli, which is like
what's his name? Miyazaki. Yeah, where he stands there like smoking and talking about
he's
depression
so angry,
and shit, and all this stuff is most like flowery, wholesome, like families and wonderfulness. Everything works out. I feel like you are a perfect candidate for this meme format, which is said as the highest compliment, right? Because your personality, at least that I've known, like through 1980 and context like right now, is very fun, very outgoing, very lively. Like you're a highly enjoyable person to be around. Obviously, a good interviewer, and then the work is very heavy. I think a lot of people would say it's definitely visceral in the sense of being raw. There's a sense of revelation of uncomfortable to talk about feelings being talked about very freely and unleashedly in your work, which is like I say, it's in contrast the artist kind of thing. I feel kind of like the reverse in the sense of like a lot of my work is very light and I'm like very heavy behind closed doors, but don't have that on stage, as it were. And I'm wondering if you could speak to the nature of that contrast a little bit, maybe the essence of whatever is inside you that makes these is clearly a very real and I'm sure quite present a lot of the time thing, yet you're nonetheless able to be this like fun, even light person, in being.
Yeah.
Tall.
And tall. That helps. I'm literally above the noise. No. So.
See above the rain clouds.
Above the rain clouds, that's right. So to borrow a Christian word, because I do not know a better word for it, I have always thought that good art is an exorcism. Like, all of my favorite art across like every medium, right? Music, novels, visual art, movies, like everything, all my favorite media has always been like the absolute darkest thing. Like I used to watch horror movies constantly as a little kid. That was my favorite. Like the scarier the better. That wasn't scary enough for me.
Okay,
like
I'm just getting a bar. Go ahead.
But the thing that like my brain would like overcompensate afterwards, where like the scarier the movie, the better dreams I would have afterwards. Like my brain would just be like, oh, like puppies and rainbows in my dreams.
Was I think movies especially movies, that's kind of a thing it serves in our culture, is this ability for the filmmaker to have this like really intense connection to that darkness. And he's is allowing us, the millions of audience, to collectively get together, fucking 200 strangers in a theater, and exorcise that together, so that you can have your puppies.
Yeah. Well, and I think horror in general, to get like slightly off topic, is like an incredible like folk storytelling exercise always, because it can only exist as a reflection of like things that some section, if not all of society, is scared of, right? So it's always this like very collaborative.
Well, all those
like
classic
folk
characters,
thing,
like the werewolf and the Dracula and stuff, are like
Pay no
clearly
attention to
archetypes
the man behind a
of.
curtain.
Yeah.
They're like archetypes of real types of folks who would exist.
Yeah, and most of the things that we've been scared of, especially with all those examples, is like other races.
Wizards and shit.
But like, I feel like all of the art that I've always been drawn to is like, has like darkness and edge to it. I think that in order to be like a happy, fun, pleasant person, like that energy still has to go somewhere, right? It's kind of how like the people that are into like the heaviest death metal are the nicest people you will ever meet, because like like all that energy like is already like all the aggression, all of the dark stuff like has a place to go, and like that feels like art's purpose to me, or at least in my life, is like that's where the dark stuff goes, so that like I can have a pleasant existence.
Well, and there's that famous old quote, I forget to whom to attribute it, right? But that art is to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.
Exactly.
And I love that shit. Yeah. And that's what you just explained personally, though. That's Jungian. That's Jungian as fuck, and I love it.
Great question and answer. That was fire. It sums it up. And I love the next time we get a critique about your piece, because it did spark many argument.
Yeah.
Even before we were taping, she and I were just talking about it.
Yeah.
And I was asking, like, why did you put this particular feature? And, like, my assumption of it, totally opposite to that.
Yeah, you had such a like pleasant interpretation, and that's so funny. Is like I get equal parts like comforting interpretations of like, yeah, it's like taking off the mask that you have to put on at the end of a day, and like you're finally comfortable, or like the squiggles are like angelic or otherworldly, and to me it's like it feels like a parasitic relationship with your own self-image, but like I don't know, that's just as good as like all of the interpretations feel equally valid to me, because again, like I'm done, I finished the piece, like it has done its work for me.
Well, that's like, you know, I'm a huge fan of Stanley Kubrick, and like 2001, yeah, that shit, that was I remember watching that at like 11 years old, and the movie ends, and I'm like, this is the first time I've like actually felt peace in my life, like genuinely, and like just total, like on death and everything. And he obviously got interviewed a gazillion times about this movie, and people, usually through some kind of language of subterfuge, they're trying to get him to directly answer, what's it mean?
Yeah.
And he knows that they're all doing this. Like hundreds of people asked him this question. So he finally says, look, my job is not to give you some roadmap to interpret my film such that if you don't follow it, you didn't check the box, like you didn't do the film right. Like my job was to make the film. Mm-hmm. The fact that we're having this conversation, that is the answer. Like what it brings about for all of us, that we're doing this, that we're now interfacing, what you can receive that's different from me, and even as the creator, I could receive something, like we were talking about feedback earlier, you know, like all of that is the resultant, just making the fucking thing. Mm-hmm. That was my job, and it's done. Have fun.
Yeah, like I had things to say, and I said them in the making of the piece.
Perfect.
Like
well, you talked about that Bob Marley when he got interviewed.
Yeah, first of all, you had to be born again. You know, it's just like start over, like with that question.
Well, but he did that killer show, and somebody asked him something about it afterwards, and he's like...
He literally said...
I just did it.
First of all,
what answer do you want? I just answered what you're asking for the last 2 hours.
Yeah, like there's the text. Read the text.
Love it. And with that, like we're getting to the end of the episode, end of the story so far. We'd like to ask you. This was recent, and it's a hotly debated new piece that everybody's talking about. What do you have on the schedule for this year? How do people see your work? How do they check you out? Your Instagram handle, your website? How do they buy your stuff? Other than location1980gallery.com?
That's the best place.
Or Instagram.
Shoot your Instagram, all that.
In addition to your handles, What do you have to look forward to this year as far as our artwork goes, our art shows?
For sure. So you can find me at Chase the Sunlight on Instagram and TikTok. I am a very inefficient poster.
I love that your stuff is so dark and you're Chase the Sunlight.
I'm Chase
That's
the Sunlight.
awesome.
There's a good story for another time behind the handle. You can also find me on chasethesunlight.com.
Nice.
I think I have Chase the Sunlight on, I know I have Chase the Sunlight on YouTube. I don't know if there's anything on there. There might be one vlog getting ready for
Well, there's one
1980 holiday show.
There's one happening right now,
Yeah,
too.
that's right. This year, my next show is at Santa Ana College in September through November or early December. That's going to be a show with myself and 2 other female artists. They're both sculptors, so I get all of the walls.
Nice.
So if you want to come see the big paintings, that is the place to see them.
You said this is where?
Santa Ana College.
Santa.
Yep.
September.
It goes up mid-September. The opening reception is September 21st.
And towards the end of the year, I'm assuming you'll be back here
Every year. Wouldn't miss it for the world.
at the annual art sale.
Christmas show.
Yeah.
1980
holiday art
sale.
sale. Yeah. I think we call it the holiday art sale, not
right.
to offend or to offend.
Happy Christmas Hanukkah.
Yeah.
To not offend me and to offend everyone else.
Yeah. We'll put you at the head of the marketing.
Perfect.
It's great. Very inefficient. I did ask all the artists in the feminine undertones that have led up to this, call it a blitzkrieg or a mashup, so many episodes in a row, all female artists. Did you have any times where things brush up against you? We talked about this earlier, but if you were going to give it a shout out to a younger artist, maybe another immigrant artist, female or not, or Head Start or not, what to do, what not to do, or just things that kind of efficiently push your way through the art world to be happy making art. You give it.
So for reasons that are completely delusional, because I do understand the world that I live in, and also sometimes you have to be a little delusional to live in the world that we live in. I firmly believe that I have as much right to be a great man of history as anyone else.
Fuck yeah.
And I firmly believe, or at least carry myself as though any rule that doesn't apply to men doesn't apply to me. For better or worse. Again, delusional. I know, I live in the world, but also sometimes you just have to assume that people will treat you the same way that they would treat some mediocre man. And you know what? Usually people will rise to the very low bar that is the occasion of treating you like a mediocre man.
That's going right on the front.
Yeah,
I love it.
That's my best advice. Just assume they'll treat you like a mediocre
it's true,
man.
'cause you teach people how to treat you.
You
man or
do,
woman,
yeah,
so
yeah,
respect is not demanded; it's commanded.
yeah.
And I can tell you understand that.
And again, through what I'm sure is just quirks of brain chemistry plus extreme luck in my family being amazing and circumstances of my upbringing, I actually am incapable of internalizing negative feedback. I just
Soft.
it just doesn't.
Superpower.
If someone says something nice, I'm correct 1,000%. I agree. And if someone says something
took you this long to
mean,
notice.
I'm just are you having a bad day? Are you good? I
Circle
cannot.
back around when you figure it out.
I can't conceive of a world in which people would be mean to me on purpose. So if someone's mean to me, I just assume that it happened by accident or they're going through something right now.
That's superpower.
I feel like cultivate that energy and that helps. And lie in your emails.
Fantastic. And with that,
That's my advice to young artists.
I would thank you for coming on the Art Pod. for our guest, Katya. Say
Thank
it
you for
again
having me.
with your full Russian accent.
Katerina Sergeyevna Zhukovskaya.
Perfect. Can't do that. My co-host Eric Ringman. I'm Jesse Fortune. Thanks for listening to the Art Podcast and tuning into Feminine Undertones. That's closing on
July 26th.
26th. Yeah,
It's a Friday. It's in July.
we like it. Everybody's coming, and
It's a
we're
great
gonna
show.
we're gonna do this whole process again very inefficiently. Thank you. Cheers.
Here, here.
Great. Awesome.